Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Mark Andrew Holacek, Ukrainian-American philosopher, Ukrainian-American historian. I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Eye on Ukraine. You know, by now the aim of this show is to educate viewers on Ukrainian history and Ukrainian culture. With these episodes, the early episodes here, I'm focusing on the war between Ukraine and Russia for obvious reasons. There is information plenty each day that comes that's relevant to the perceived outcome of the war. And today, I focus on Donald Trump once again. He claims that he is the key figure for surcease of the war. That is increasingly being shown to be very, very questionable, very doubtful. What I find fascinating about him is the psychological dimension. His use of language to describe events. And here I want to focus on something, the way he described the war when Friedrich Merz was in the Oval Office not too long ago. And the question turned to the Ukrainian war, and Trump said the following, and I quote, "They hate each other, and they're fighting in a park, and you try to pull them apart. They don't want to be pulled. Sometimes you're better off letting them fight for a while and then pulling them apart." You know, he talks of this thing as sometimes you see two young children fighting like crazy. He continues, "You see it in hockey, you see it in sports. The referees let them go for a couple seconds. They let them go for a little while before you pull them apart." Well, that might not seem like much, but I think there's a lot here to unpack, and let me try to unpack it. Trump's language, his verbiage, the way that he describes events, is always a constant source of amusement for me. What his language betrays when he's talking about two children fighting here is a sort of neutrality vis-a-vis the war. There's no right or wrong. That's an important element. Trump always, his language in the past has suggested, if not implied, that Ukraine was the aggressor, following the Putinic line of thinking that Ukraine was really the aggressor. They're to blame for the war, following Vladimir Putin's notion that Russia is not culpable for its actions. So the idea here is there's no right or wrong, right? It's just like two kids come together, they don't like each other, they're going to fight. Now you can get and break up the fight or try to break up the fight, but that might be too quick of a response. Sometimes the person trying to intervene and stop the fight could get involved and get hurt. Let them fight it out. Let them get exhausted. This idea is vis-a-vis the war. Let the participants of the war exhaust themselves in terms of their militaries, in terms of their resources, and so forth. And then it might be the time then to intervene. Okay. So the idea here, the first implication here is that there is no right or wrong. The kids are fighting for no good reason. And this betrays, as I have said before, profound, and I underscore the notion of profound. It's not just ignorance, it's stupidity. Here is a person who is unwilling to learn anything about global history. He knows so very little about American history. He thought Thomas Jefferson was responsible for the U.S. Constitution. Jefferson was in France at the time. So I mean, that's laughable, but that's Donald Trump. So here there is no right or wrong. A second observation, as it were, is that there are broad implications for the war. And, Trump intervenes as a deal maker. He made a deal for Ukraine's minerals and about a month ago, or over a month ago, and so forth. And Trump, using the art of the deal, sees this as what's in it for us? What's in it for the United States? He doesn't, and he's got a very immediate, so immediacy of perspective is critical here. He's got a very immediate perspective. He doesn't see the long-term implications of events. He doesn't really care to see them. Um, Russia, Andrei Illarionov, who was an economic advisor to Vladimir Putin early in Putin's presidency, said Putin had his eye on Ukraine at least since 2003, had a plan for invading Ukraine. And Trump knows nothing. He doesn't care about that. To make a deal, you don't need to know the history. You just need to get involved in the situation, make sure you can broker some deal that privileges the broker, right? The person intervening in affairs and so forth. So there are broad implications. If Europe and the United States refuse to do anything, what happens with Taiwan? Um, view the view that Putin has, and the view that Trump, I think, has, is that instead of talking about nation states that are democratic and other sorts of states, Trump has a spheres of influence, like Putin has a spheres of influence. Putin doesn't see Russia as a nation per se. He sees it as an empire that has a sphere of influence, and the sphere of influence covers 1/6 of the globe and has implications both for Europe and Asia. And I think Putin would be very, very pleased and very happy to conquer all of Eastern Europe, if not all of Europe. And I don't think Trump really gives a damn about that one way or the other, so long as he could have Mexico and Greenland and Canada and so forth. And so the United States would have his own sphere of influence. And I haven't even mentioned China. A third observation is that Trump, who promised to end the war in one day, which was a completely stupid, right, claim to make, shows, of course, that he just doesn't have any understanding of the history of events between Ukraine and Russia. And to be able to Putin always talks about get at the root causes, and Putin is right to say that, even though Putin's notion of root causes is reducible to NATO expansionism. So in that, he's confusing cause with effect. He's taking the effect of something as the cause. NATO expansionism is a direct result of Russian aggression over the decades. It's not that NATO expansion is the cause of Russian aggression, right? But Comrade Krasnov, right, sees the situation as impossible. He could have solved the war in one day if he sat down with reasonable people. These are not reasonable people. These are kids fighting, and he can't control. No one can control them. So it's sort of excuse here for Comrade Krasnov for his impotence, for his impotency. He clearly has no ability to end the war. He does really. He could take the side of NATO and Ukraine. He could furnish with Ukraine with enough weaponry for Russia to surrender. And we know, and I've been preaching this for months, Russia's economy is on the brink of colossal disaster. This is being iterated and reiterated by political and economic commentators all over the place in essays and on YouTube and so forth. So it's not very difficult to intervene in such a manner where we can expedite surcease of the war in favor of Ukraine. And this is not a war that's going to be ended by bargaining. It's going to be ended by one party or the other being reduced to surrender. A fourth observation concerns Krasnovian history. Comrade Krasnov has his own take on history. There is real history, which is complex. There's a skein of events. Things are complex, interconnected, and Trump sees none of that. He doesn't understand anything about history, doesn't even like to read. But he has his own take. Let's just reduce this to a deal, as it were. And insofar as we do that, we could try to broker peace, right? If we understand that, neither party is really good or bad. The real is no good or bad. Let's not even look at it that way. There are two kids fighting that just don't like each other, and let them exhaust themselves for some small amount of time before we come in and come up with a deal, come up with a compromise solution that makes all parties happy. Again, I go back to the first point. There is a right or wrong here, right? There is. Ukraine is a sovereign nation, and Russia had no business intervening in Ukrainian affairs in 2014, coming into Crimea and then going into the Donbass and now into southern parts of Ukraine as well. And there is a precedent being set here. There is a right or wrong. Russia, Putin is wrong, and Ukraine needs to be defended. If not, again, as I said, there are broad and global implications for inaction here. And inaction is just not, the European leaders of NATO understand that inaction is not an option, right? And insofar as they can do what they can to expedite an end to the war by aiding Ukraine at the expense of Russia, they're doing what they can. So, anyways, I hope you enjoyed this essay, this show today. It's been a sort of brief essay, a brief discussion of Donald Trump's use of languages and the implications for the U.S.'s involvement or non-involvement in the Ukrainian-Russian war. Anyways, I'm Dr. H. Polkovnik. I'm signing off. And if you enjoyed this show, please like it and please share it. TTFN.